A gray misty dawn blanketed the prairie as wind howled through the rotting fence of the abandoned farm. Caleb Stratton had just set foot on the land left to him by his late uncle. He had not even begun to unpack. His boots, still dusty from the battlefield, landed heavily on the hardened ground as he made his way to the door of the old barn. The hinges screamed with a chilling screech as he pushed the door open. Pale light crept in and then Caleb froze. 8 bodies hung limply from the rafters. Ropes pulled tight around their necks. Their shadows stretched long across the barn floor. Wind slipped through the cracks in the walls, making the thin bodies sway gently like dead ghosts caught dancing in the twilight. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. His years on the battlefield had shown him hundreds of deaths, but nothing had ever hit him like this. This was not a war zone. This was a farm, a place where he had hoped to begin a new life. Then he noticed what made his blood run cold. From one of the hanging figures came a faint moan, soft and thin like a breeze, eyes barely open, fluttering weakly. They were not dead. Caleb stepped back half a pace, heart pounding wildly in his chest. He began to question the decaying barn, this place that now held in its grasp the fate of 8 Apache girls. The scene shocked him to his core. Caleb Stratton stood frozen in front of the horrifying scene. The smell of rotting wood, dried grass, and faint traces of dried blood hung in the air, choking him. His callous hands gripped the handle of the old hunting knife strapped to his side. Suddenly, memories came flooding back: battlefields, fallen comrades, and the hollow emptiness that had followed him for the past 10 years. Caleb had once been a cavalryman. He survived when his entire unit was wiped out, returning home with a body full of scars and a heart eaten away from the inside. His wife and daughter had died in a vicious plague. Since then, he had drifted like a ghost with only whiskey and darkness for company. Then a letter arrived, a will from his late uncle, leaving him a farm on the edge of Dry Creek. Caleb saw it as his final shot at redemption. He hoped to find peace out there on the wild prairie, rebuild the house, mend the fences, and live out his days in quiet solitude. But that hope turned to ashes the moment he stepped through the barn door. The farm he had inherited was nothing short of a living graveyard. The fences were broken, the roof sagging, and now at its heart, 8 Apache girls hung by the neck like vengeful spirits. Caleb moved toward them slowly, each step heavier than the last. He could hear a rasping breath from one of the bodies. A pair of dark eyes cracked open, barely clinging to life. His heart pounded, and in that instant he saw his daughter again, just a little girl. Once gasping for air, begging for help with her eyes before the sickness stole her away. His grip tightened on the knife, his jaw clenched. He could not just stand there. In that moment, Caleb understood this inheritance was not just a gift from fate. Maybe it was a trap, a twist of destiny dragging him back to the edge between life and death, between justice and evil. The barn door still creaked in the wind, and the 8 swaying figures seemed to call out to him, forcing a choice. He could walk away, leave it all behind, or he could step forward and cut the ropes, choking the life out of each and every one of them. Caleb drew a long breath. The knife in his hand felt as heavy as a mountain, but for the first time in years, he knew exactly what he had to do. The knife in Caleb's hand trembled slightly as he looked up at the rafters. 8 bodies hung limply, bare feet turning a ghastly shade of purple, the ropes digging into their skin, leaving streaks of dried blood. One pair of eyes flickered open, blinking rapidly. A faint glimmer of a plea shining through. "Oh Lord," Caleb whispered, then rushed forward. He wrapped his arms around the first body and slashed the rope clean through. The girl collapsed heavy and ice-cold. Caleb dropped to his knees, lowering her onto the straw-covered floor. Her breath was faint, but still there. He struck her back hard, and a rough, rattling groan escaped her lips. Without hesitation, he moved on. The knife sliced through rope after rope, each lifeless figure dropping heavily onto his callous arms. Sweat poured down his forehead and spine, even in the morning chill. With every rope he cut, his heart lurched, terrified he might be too late. When the last girl hit the ground, Caleb was gasping for breath. He dragged each one out of the barn's moldy shadows and into the dry earth bathed in early sunlight. Faint warmth began to return to their pale cheeks. One of the girls opened her eyes. Her cracked lips quivered, and in a mixture of broken Apache and scattered English, she whispered, "Please do not leave. Stay just for tonight." Caleb knelt beside her, his pale gray eyes locking onto hers. In that moment, he saw his daughter again. Those same pleading, fragile eyes just before they faded away. It felt like something reached inside and squeezed his heart. He quickly pulled each frail body into the cabin. The small room reeked of mold, but it was the only shelter with a roof. He lit a fire, poured water from a wooden bucket, and coaxed it into their mouths one sip at a time. Some coughed harshly, but their throats took it in, their eyes beginning to open. The fire crackled, casting flickering light across their ghostly faces. They were no longer hanging phantoms. They were fragile lives, clawing for each breath. Caleb sat there, his hands raw and bloodied from the ropes, eyes fixed on every single one of them. He did not know who they were or why they had been left to die in that barn. But he knew one thing for certain. From the moment his knife touched that first rope, he felt it. Trouble was coming, and it had its sights set on him. Night fell quickly over the prairie. Inside the crumbling cabin, the fire flickered like a faint heartbeat of life. 8 Apache girls lay huddled around it, their bodies trembling, their breaths sometimes strong, sometimes fading. Caleb